this is actually a really cool species to talk about. Its name would be Dipteryx micrantha. However, its local name is Shihuahuaco. This tree can grow up to be over 1,000 years old, and there are records of it being over 1,000 years old in the river of Las Piedras, which is just on the other side of Puerto Maldonado. However, this tree is becoming more endangered every single day within this area because it has very hard wood, so it is often being illegally logged for the wood. So it's very important to protect these species of trees. They're quite beautiful, and it's quite amazing that there is a species of tree that can exist here that existed way back in like the 1500s as well. So it's a really important tree to help protect. The fruit of it has an outer coating, and the outer coating of that fruit is often eaten by bats, and then the bats disperse the seeds of it. So therefore, that's how this tree often gets dispersed, by bats, as well as other mammals eat it. However, bats are the more common ones to eat it. One of the main ways you can identify it, obviously, is by its large buttress roots. As you see, like me standing next to it, they're quite tall. And then as well as the bark of it is more of like a salmon color. The salmon color of the bark is one of the easiest ways to identify it, as well as if you see any of its fruit around. So this is actually a very important species, especially for here in Mancha de Dios, especially for conservation purposes. So a tree like this is always one that we want to preserve and make sure never gets cut down. So it's very, very important. So this one is a part of the palm family, which would be Acaciae. This one's quite interesting. It's actually very common to use for medicinal plants. Its scientific name would be Euterpe precatoria, and its common local name would be Wasai. This palm produces the fruits that are known as acai, which is commonly eaten by a bunch of people, especially around here. However, it's quite interesting, and the main way you can identify this plant, well, this palm, is by looking at the roots. The roots are always within this little shape and always more closer to the ground, as well as if you can see how bright red they are, it always gets this bright red after it rains. So since we had a lot of rainfall yesterday, it's kind of like the perfect day to be able to look at this to see how bright red it gets. If you would like to use it for medicinal purposes, basically you use the roots and you brew it up like a tea or like a mate. Basically, its medicinal properties can be used for like UTI and kidney issues. So this tree right here is actually one that could hurt you, and I'll explain why in like a little bit. The genus of it is Triplaris, and then the most common species around this area is Americana. So I can't say for relatively sure that this is Americana, but it's definitely a Triplaris, and then for now the species is unknown. But the reason this tree can actually really hurt you is because it's inhabited by fire ants known as Tangarana. And also the local name of this tree would be Tangarana. As you see like around us, there's no relative other plants around us, and that's because basically the ants protect the tree from anything harmful that could be around it, so they think other plants could be harmful. If it feels like an area where somebody's going to hurt it, you'll watch all the ants come out of the tree and basically come and get it. If you see, they're going to start to come out right now, and then they'll swarm that area where it's being attacked. However, this can also be a medicinal plant. If you peel off the bark and then use the bark as a tea, it can be really good if you have like diarrhea or a stomach ache or other stuff like that. And then also, as in the past, this has been used as a relative form of torture. Basically what they used to do is they used to tie adulterers, mostly women, because they only considered women mostly adulterers back in the day. And basically what they do is they just continuously hit the tree. If you get bit by over 200 of these, you will die. If you get by like 100 of them, you will be relatively close to death, and maybe will die, but maybe won't. So this is why this tree can actually be very dangerous, and it really hurts. However, it also is very good for its medicinal benefits. This palm is another example of a palm within the Acaciae family. Its scientific name would be Socratea exorrhiza. However, its like common English name would be walking palm. The reason it gets that name is because as it grows, the stilt roots expand, and it looks like it's kind of moving from where it was relatively when it was smaller. And so that's why it gets the name walking palm. However, this also can be dangerous, so it's one that you need to watch out for when you grab onto things, because as you see, these are spikes, and these spikes can really hurt. So say you're walking down a hill and you need something to grab on, you always want to make sure first what you grab onto, and second, if it has something with spikes on it, you always want to be relatively very careful, and normally 10 out of 10 times you don't want to grab onto it because it's spiky and it can really hurt your hand, and the spikes can go through your hand. However, this is a really cool example of the palm, and one that's quite familiar and quite often seen around here in our concession on the Wilderness International land.